Father's march. My only grief is when we stand these days apart. Don't know where the money
To me, Catalyst is a place where people with different outlooks and backgrounds and ages and just from all different sectors are welcome to come and share and disagree and learn and really have the same focus of making this area a better place to live and being kinder to each other, and I think that is really all you could ask for.
I like at Catalyst when people publicly razz each other, you know that there's true friendship behind that, and it means there's good people here, and appreciate meeting all the good people. I'm Jorge Perez with Modesto City School District, and this morning I had a great time at Catalyst. Catalyst is a great opportunity to meet people, build positive relations, network, and better serve our community. Again, I want to encourage anyone to please come out to Catalyst, a great place to serve our community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Torres. I work with Youth for Christ, and I help here at Catalyst. It's a great place to connect. We have a lot of fun here. For a knucklehead like me, I don't get to meet a lot of cool people and a lot of people that are pouring to me, and it's been a huge blessing to be a part of Catalyst. Super excited about people that I get to meet. And on top of that, we have free Starbucks, so you gotta come check us out. Come out, enjoy some good fellowship and some good coffee. Holla at you.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. Let's go ahead and start off in prayer. Father God, we come to you in Jesus' name, Lord. We ask, Lord, for wisdom, for knowledge, that you would increase that wisdom for our leaders and people coming together. We ask for peace for all the residents in Modesto and Stanislaus County. We ask, God, that you place Stanislaus County as a lighthouse for others to follow and to see the great works that you are doing here. We ask for your unity with all of us here and your peace that passes all understanding. In the name of Jesus, amen. Well, I'd like to welcome you all here. We gather here once a month at Catalyst, and we are a gathering of area leaders, influencers, and everyone coming together to impact our community. Please take a moment to look at your tables. We do have sign-in sheets there. Please fill them out so that we can not only keep you up to date on what's going on with Catalyst and City Ministry Network, but we could also champion your efforts as well. So you know, I am Teresa Kinney. I am a public servant. I currently work for Congressman Jeff Denham. I'm also American political adjunct instructor. Sorry, forgot that. At Modesto Junior College. In fact, I have a class right now, and rather than being in the class, I've asked my students to come aboard and actually witness what it's like to participate in citizen participation such as this. So thank you, students, for being here. There's also a flyer. You should have received one when you walked in. The front page has upcoming Catalyst meetings, and on the back are the Modesto networks. Please take a moment. We want to let you know that there are 4 important and exciting events taking place. I want to let you know that today, right after Catalyst, Jeannie Boyer, Jeannie, could you stand up for those that don't know you? Where are you at? Jeannie, there she is. She'll be leading a seminar at the Kirk Lindsay Center over there on 1020 10th Street. If you can't go right after this meeting, she's also having another one tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. You could also pay at the door if you have not signed up yet. So please be sure to see Jeannie if you have any questions, or go right to the Kirk Lindsay Center. On October 2nd through the 3rd, Recovering Modesto is having a conference with Dr. John Townsend. Is Scott Miller here? Scott, please stand up. He's here to answer any questions that you might have in regards to that. And please be sure to see him afterwards if you have any questions. Also, on October 8th, we have our annual Christian Servants Breakfast. We want to let you know that Jorge Perez, Jorge, are you here? He's here in the back. I want to let you know that he is being awarded at this breakfast, and rightly so. He will be, yes, please. He will be getting the LaCour Citizenship Award, so congratulations to him. And Nancy, could you please stand up? She's right there over there. If you have any questions, if you would like to attend a Christian Servants, Public Servants Breakfast, please go see Nancy. You could also pay right today directly with Nancy by check if you have that available to you. That same day, on October 8th, there will be a seminar on reaching kids who are hardest to reach. This is a fantastic seminar in effort to help bring healing to our youth. Chad Brown, can you please stand? Is Chad here? There's Chad Brown. Thank you, Chad. Chad is leading the efforts on this. And if you have any questions, please be sure to see Chad afterwards as well. Our theme today is about being a city united. Exactly, for impact. How can we as a city impact our residents, each other, and not only that, what about the state of California? How can we impact our people here and elsewhere? In just a little bit, Dr. Randy White from the Center for Community Transformation in Fresno will be sharing with us about his city. But before he does, let's talk about our city at our tables. I want to let you know, if there is a New York Times reporter in here, and he wants to interview each and every one of you, and he asked you, what's great about Modesto? What would you tell the reporter? And what would you tell the reporter what you think is great about Modesto? So please, take a moment right now and have that discussion at your table.
Your love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfires, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. stretch across the skies. These hallelujahs be multiplied. Your love is like radiant diamond bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely combine us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. Made this offering, stretch across the sky. These hallelujahs be multiplied. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, and I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the sky. These hallelujahs be multiplied. These hallelujahs be multiplied. Like blazing wildfire, singing your name. Ramblers in the wilderness, yeah, we can't find what we need. We get a little restless from the search and get a little worn down in between. Like a bull chasing the matadors, a man left to his own schemes. But everybody needs someone beside, shining like a lighthouse from the sea. Brother, let me be your shelter. Never leave you all alone. I can be the one you call when you're low. Brother, let me be your fortress. The night with the driving on. Be the one to light the way. Bring it home. Face down in the desert now. There's a cage locked around my heart. I found a way to drop the keys where my failures were. Now my hands can't reach that far.
All right, take one more minute at your tables.
All right, welcome everyone. We're delighted that you're here this morning. Before I introduce our speaker this morning, most of you by now have recognized that Marvin is not here this morning. And look at the crowd. We always have to make fun of Marvin just a little bit. But in a little bit of a more serious note, some of you may know this, some of you may not. But we wanted you to know that Marvin is in Phoenix, Arizona, with his wife Cheryl. Cheryl, as many of you know, has been suffering for a number of years with, up until now, an undiagnosed illness, now being diagnosed as Lyme's disease. Very difficult disease to treat. And Cheryl and Marvin's road has been difficult, to say the least. And so they're now at a treatment center in Arizona, and Marvin and Cheryl will be there for the next couple of months. And so we're all kind of trying to take up some of that slack somehow. But we say this to tell you and make sure that you know, and asking that you would just be in prayer for both Marvin and Cheryl. Marvin's exhausted, and Cheryl is really kind of at the end of her wits. And this is a very difficult treatment. It's not a simple thing. It's not like take 2 of these and you'll feel better in the morning. This is, the treatment is almost worse than the disease, but they're hopeful. There's a website that's being shown on the screen there. There's the lovely Mrs. Jacobo and then Marvin. But you can go on that website and kind of follow their progress. Marvin will post different things on that. There's also a site there. To be quite honest, this is a very, very expensive treatment, and we're not necessarily trying to solicit funds here, but if you feel led to help with those expenses, that website, you can go on that website. There's a host of information there, and you also will be able to just kind of follow their progress. So we just say that again to kind of keep you informed as to what Marvin's going through. And seriously, this is a difficult time for them. Marvin has given a lot to this community. He's been a wonderful friend to me, and I've enjoyed so much working with him. We give him a bad time. We always say, well, we wouldn't kid him so much if we didn't love him so much, and that's really true. So anyway, be in prayer for that. This morning, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to announce our speaker this morning. Dr. Randy White is the Executive Director for the Center for Community Transformation based at Fresno Pacific University and Seminary. He was the founder of the Fresno Institute for Urban Leadership, now in its 24th year of operation. He formerly directed the National Urban Project Program for InterVarsity, and for many years he led Bakke Graduate University's Global Doctorate Program focused on urban transformation, working on 5 different continents with 39 different countries. He is the author of a number of books and articles, and for over 2 decades, he and his wife, Tina, have lived and served in the poorer communities of their city. Dr. White holds a doctorate in global urban leadership and 2 earned master's degrees. He's been married for 36 years to his wife, Tina. They are the proud parents of 2 sons and, more importantly, 5 grandchildren. He also has a really cool beard. So would you please give Randy White a great big Modesto welcome.
I've got a mic. Thank you so much. Wow, I'm impressed. Good morning, everybody. It is good to be in Modesto. You can have confidence that I really believe that because I got up at 4 o'clock this morning to get here. I know Jesus got up early, but oh my. In my early years in ministry, I came to Modesto quite often because I supervised the intervarsity staff at Modesto Junior College, and I just absolutely loved meeting students in the library or the student center, especially if a donut was involved, and it usually was. Although I understand that I probably would not recognize many of the buildings there now. There's been so much growth and development on campus, so I'm really excited and hope to get back there and see that. Well, I'll jump right in. I join you this morning not as an expert, but as a colleague, as one who has walked a similar road in my city, believing that people of faith can make an impact and have a role to play. Meaningful transformation is possible, both at a community level and, of course, at an individual level as well. Some 25 years into this journey, I can say that that belief is rooted in actual experience, seeing transformation in progress. As John mentioned, my experience has been formed in very diverse settings. I spent 3 decades working with emerging leaders in various forms, worked internationally with Ray Bakke for several years, transformational leaders working in squatter settlements and mega slums. Learned an amazing amount there. I've worked with churches and community benefit organizations for the last 22 years. I've consulted across the country with leaders in cities. And in all of these settings, I've come to see how real impact happens, how transformation is catalyzed. And this is not a pie-in-the-sky idea. It's happening, and people of faith are exercising strategic roles in it, believing that place matters to God. And my current work is dedicated to that process, and I'll just take a minute here to give you some context for how I spend my days. I direct the Center for Community Transformation at Fresno Pacific University and Seminary, and we exist to equip God's people in the valley to establish God's abundant community. We research concentrated poverty solutions, we convene leaders around those solutions, and we do specialized training in whatever skill sets are necessary to achieve those solutions. You notice I said solutions 3 times. We're not just looking at the problems, we're looking at best practices. We have 4 initiatives in the community, specialized financial literacy training for extreme poverty neighborhoods to combat the negative effects of payday lending and financial chaos. Secondly, Latino pastoral certification, providing access to leadership development, theological education, and training in community transformation for bivocational Spanish-speaking pastors and lay leaders throughout the valley. We have, thirdly, civic renewal initiatives focusing on critical issues of health and well-being for valley residents, including GED education, anti-human trafficking, and emerging leader development. And then finally, our signature initiative, our social enterprise initiative known as the Spark Tank. It equips people and institutions of faith to create small businesses focused on specific areas of social impact. So for example, it could be employing people that have a barrier to employment or helping to fund specific forms of outreach. We do this through work of our hands summits, social enterprise academies, and then our annual Spark Tank Pitch Fest, which is actually this month. That process has helped to catalyze 9 social enterprises in the city throughout the last 2 years. This month, in fact, we will invest $25,000 in helping churches and individuals pitch ideas and get them started for employing people with barriers to employment. At the same time, becoming financially self-sustaining and reducing dependence upon charity. So we're still accepting proposals, by the way, but you have to hurry. Deadline is next week if you have a good idea. All right, that's enough on my context. So, how is a city united for impact? Well, as a backdrop, let me take a few moments to tell you what my city was like 25 years ago. These realities defined Fresno's experience. In 1992, we were a disconnected city where crime and violence were out of control. We had the highest rates of violent crime of any California county in every category. We had 100 murders in Fresno that year. There were 8,000 validated gang members. Children were killing children. 13,000 car thefts, the car theft capital of the United States. No functional faith engagement over these issues whatsoever. No public faith advocacy for the vulnerable or for justice, for example. Churches operating in silos, proud of what they were doing, but not having a global impact in the city. Now that's the macro view. Let's take a look at the local view. This is my neighborhood. My family and I moved into Lowell in 1993. Lowell was being called the Devil's Triangle at the time because of the crime and the violence. It was the highest crime, highest poverty neighborhood of our city. There were 3 active gangs patrolling. There was gunfire literally every night. There were times my family and I got on the floor because bullets were flying. There was no functional faith presence in that neighborhood, no after-school options for children, 8% home ownership, which meant 92% of all residents were renting their homes from absentee landlords and slumlords. No street sweeping because the streets hadn't been paved correctly. No alley lighting. 75 abandoned and boarded up properties, and we're talking about a quarter square mile tract of land. So 75 boarded up properties, a mostly negative image of fear. No new development or housing. No code enforcement happening. The city turning a blind eye to that neighborhood because the residents were poor and could never get anybody in the city to pay attention. Those realities created a sense of desperation among many in leadership throughout the city, especially when we as leaders realized our siloed existence as churches and Christian nonprofits was impairing the potential for collective impact in our city. We could go on telling each other the same anecdotal stories about the effectiveness of each of our ministries, all the while the debilitating negative macro issues of our city remained unaddressed and unchanged and were even growing. Do you sense this ever happens in your city? Yeah, we realized if we went on doing what we had always done, we would get more of what we had always gotten, and what we had always gotten was no longer acceptable in our city. A little boy on his way home from school 3 blocks from my house, Aurelio, involved in the dangerous activity of walking home from school, caught a bullet right in the middle of his forehead because he happened to step in between 2 gangs that were shooting it out. And somehow his death galvanized our city so that we said to ourselves, this is not acceptable in our city, that a child is killed just by walking home. Not acceptable. Have you ever said that to yourself? This is not acceptable in our city. And looking back, I've realized our desperation led to collaboration. And collaboration led ultimately to innovation. Now we're so excited about that when I look in retrospect that this is possible, that something good can come from desperation. Is there desperation in your city? Let me tell you, if that desperation is not reaching the eyes of leaders in your city, then we need to take our leaders to the desperation, because that's what changes life and experience and makes collaboration possible. Looking back, what emerged in the first decade after these initial experiences, I now realize what we saw emerge was remarkable. It was the evolution of what my friend H. Spies calls a spiritual infrastructure for transformation. So here's what we saw grow, and these letters will maybe mean something if you're paying attention to what I say. It's an alphabet soup up there. FIFL, Fresno Institute for Urban Leadership, began by helping people have college students have experiences in the city. They did a tutoring program. They did urban internships. They did urban awareness projects and service projects, but then evolved into an institute. And then they planted the Pink House. And the Pink House is a residential urban ministry training center where students live for a year and serve for a year and study God's love for the city. And out of that, there started a relocation movement. They would move from the Pink House into Lowell. And now there are some 30 relocators living in Lowell that have come through that process even more. One-by-one leadership, a Christ-centered civic mediator, if you will, a leadership foundation was begun in the city and became a gathering point, much like what happens here at Catalyst. One by one began to help evangelicals especially think more biblically about social involvement. The No Name Fellowship was planted, which is a monthly gathering of faith leaders across the sectors, and I'll say more about that in a minute. Again, very much like what you're doing here at Catalyst. Pastors' clusters that organize themselves geographically, crossing lines of class and race and denomination to love and serve sectors of the city. That slide, the next slide you're looking at here, is a slide of the pastors' clusters in the city. They're organized geographically, so pastors will cross lines of class and race to say, we care about this one part of the city. It could be a zip zone, could be a natural boundary or landmark, but they gather monthly in order to talk about that geography right there. No more eating and meeting and greeting, right? It's all about the geography, loving the geography. ESA matched human need to the resources in churches. Prayer summits. We had some 30 prayer summits over 20 years, which built vision and relationships. City Builders Roundtable, a monthly collection of missional agencies, nonprofit leaders that come together to resource each other and talk about collaborating. They even do corporate fundraising sometimes, stopping the competition that happens for grants, working more collaboratively, sharing resources. Care Fresno, I'll say more about that in a minute. Faith in Community, which does advocacy and community organizing. City Summit, which began 9 years ago with 35 young leaders in their 20s and 30s, learning about Christ-centered civic engagement. And the last 2 years, there were 350 leaders at this gathering, learning about what young, emerging leaders can do to embrace their city in the name of Christ. Every Neighborhood Partnership, and I'll comment more about this in a minute as the last example to illustrate a principle of uniting a city for impact. Now, this alphabet soup up here, and of course you see churches on the vertical column, very key churches embracing their city, key churches saying, yeah, we're going to love our city, and it's not just going to be about our denomination or our empire. These are just a few pieces of the spiritual infrastructure that we saw emerged. Now, we've learned in Fresno, we're slowly learning, that how leaders see their city is important. There are several ways of seeing a city that we could cover, but today I'm just going to focus on two. First, seeing your city as a collection of neighborhoods. A neighborhood. Break your city down into a collection of neighborhoods. And one way to do that is by elementary schools. So, how many elementary schools are there in your city? Well, in Fresno, there are 64 elementary school neighborhoods. Here they are. An elementary school is a good way to organize your city because it's walkable. The kids walk to their elementary school usually. Neighborhoods are often defined around them. Sometimes neighborhoods are even named after them. My neighborhood is Lowell, is named after Lowell Elementary School. So what if you as a ministry could say, well, what's the asset that we have in our city? There are 510 churches in Fresno. Well, every neighborhood partnership, ENP, decided they would match churches to elementary schools. So here's where they are now. They're in 58 of the 61 schools in the city. This is the church saying, we will embrace the educational system of our city. It is a systemic change happening. So there are after-school kids clubs at those elementary schools. There are Saturday morning sports clubs at those schools. There's in-class reading help at those schools. There's campus beautification happening at those schools. And do you think those principals and teachers believe that the church is relevant? Yeah. This is a sea change in our city, and it's happened just in the last 8 years. The second way of seeing your city is through the interplay of institutions in sectors with regard to neighborhoods, neighborhood sectors. So here you have a city. In every city, there are public sector institutions. You know, public sector institutions are schools, government, law enforcement, etc. You have private sector institutions, and these are business, labor, etc., media. And then you have nonprofit or community benefit sector, and these are other religious organizations, these are nonprofit agencies, these are churches, etc. Now, what if you could get some of these to work? And by the way, the church, where is the church? Well, the church is in neighborhoods, right? But guess where the church is also? I mean, we're not just talking about the church gathered here. We're talking about the church scattered. And on Monday morning, they scattered all of these institutions. And so what if you could get them to work together? Well, in Fresno, we had a program called Care Fresno. And this is an amazing program. So there are apartment complexes in the city with high calls for police service. Drug dealing, gang banging. So the police would come in, they'd drive out a drug dealer, but next month, of course, there'd be another drug dealer in there, and the problem would go on. Thousands of calls for police service at some of these apartment complexes. So Care Fresno, which at the time was being led by One Leadership Foundation, said, let's come in and work with the police, and they'll drive the drug dealer out, but then let's ask the apartment owner not to re-rent that one unit. Instead, let's get the church to come, dress the place up, create a little center for kids, a drop-in center, tutoring program, bring volunteers, and let's get the school to come, and they'll donate computers and books and things like that. So now, how many sectors did I just mention there? Institutions in all three sectors collaborating. In Care Fresno apartment complexes, calls for police service dropped 73% in all Care Fresno sites across the city, because you had churches, the business owner, the apartment owner, the police, and the school collaborating across the sectors, looking at the assets that already existed right there. And that's a key. So how we see our cities is important, and mobilizing assets in all the sectors to serve the city. But that's just part of what's necessary for impact. We need more than perspective. It's perspective leading to those collaborative decisions that faith leaders in institutions need to make. And so I want to talk about the key elements leading to what the Stanford Innovation Review calls collective impact. Let me use these as a rubric and add a faith twist to it. So Stanford says, collective impact requires a common agenda. In the early 90s, when Fresno was falling apart in so many ways, key faith leaders of the city came together and formed the No Name Fellowship. Very much like what's happening here, cross-sector in Catalyst. They adopted this purpose, releasing God's resources through reconciled relationships for the rebuilding of the city, our 3 R's. And every meeting, they exposed city leaders to an issue impacting the common good. We exchanged the latest best practice about approaching that issue, and then we embraced that issue. We mobilized and embraced on the part of the church. Is there a mechanism in your city for faith leaders to agree to a common, specific agenda? The question to ask is, what is the gospel compelling us to do in light of our current situation? Secondly, Stanford says what's required for collective impact is shared measurement. This means adopting empirical forms of measurement to chart the progress being made or not made in a particular social indicator in the city. It could be the level of educational preparedness of third graders. For example, did you know that students not reading on par in the third grade are 80% more likely to go to prison? It could be the incarceration rates or homeless counts or unemployment rates or the number of liquor stores in a community. Because did you know, now there's been an empirical relationship established between the number of liquor stores in a community and the rate of gun violence in that community. Measurement is where most faith movements in cities fail. And Fresno is no exception. We've become very comfortable relying on anecdotal stories to convince ourselves that we're making a difference, and that is deadly. Recently, the Fresno Business Council has created a website called Community Scorecard, where a lot of demographic as well as many social indicators are measured and presented. So up here you see you can pick an indicator from among several: economics, education, health, family, people groups, etc. So let's pick education. And inside education, you'll see you can choose at the bottom left there, educational attainment. That chart measures adults in my city who have a high school education or less. Turns out that's a third of our people. That information is important, don't you think? As we form ministry strategies, it's part of what informed Every Neighborhood Partnerships strategies. Now, the scorecard is only one form of data collection. We as ministries need to learn to collect and use data better in each of our individual ministries and collaborative efforts. And I could say so much more about this, but there is no time. Let me just say, though, the so-called secular world often does a better job of measuring impact than we do. So, collective impact. Third, collective impact requires mutually reinforcing activities. In its most basic form, this can mean we simply show up to each other's stuff. And I know how hard that is, because our own stuff is exhausting enough, right? And I can't tell you how important it is in building collaborative spirit in our city. Our pastors' clusters have been the perfect place to work on collaborative activities, whether it's a community outreach event, whether it's a whole city youth outreach event, or whether it's prayer vigil over the outbreak of violence or an injustice in the city. It says that my ministry is not the center of everything. My ministry takes place in the context of a city, and I need to reserve time and energy for the things my colleagues are doing in the city that need support. What would you have to do to create a little margin for that in your schedule? It could be a crucial question you ask yourself this morning. Fourth, collective impact requires continuous communication. We've learned in Fresno that while leadership relationships are key, they can easily fall into that comfortable eating, meeting, and greeting pattern that I was talking about and lose sight of the common commitment and kind of the eye on the prize of city transformation. The vision needs to be nurtured. The values and goals of city transformation need to be consistently communicated and reviewed and rehearsed, repeated, in other words, in order to be deeply embedded and then contextualized and refined. Finally, collective impact requires backbone support, according to Stanford. In order to accomplish much of the above, it's extremely helpful to have one or two organizations in a city that are providing the impetus to convene, the data management systems to measure progress, the credibility to remind city leadership of the goal, and the capacity of some coordination between churches and agencies. Stanford calls these backbone organizations. Now, there can be several in a city if they don't compete. So they have to be very strong relationally with each other, knowing what their own capacities are, and then add value to the collective impact process. Now, if these categories seem foreign to you, I would challenge you to dive into them anyway and apply your own faith lens to that process. Tim Keller of Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York City would like us to consider key elements in what he calls a ministry ecosystem of a city. And Keller reminds us that an ecosystem is a biological system by which various life forms feed on each other, and therefore life grows. And if you take out one element, the whole system suffers. So following that metaphor, he presents 7 kinds of ministry networks in a city that interrelate with churches in the city, and this would be a healthy ecosystem. According to Keller, it includes citywide prayer. It includes specialist evangelism focused on subgroups like youth or business people or artists or specific ethnic groups. It includes justice and mercy ministries, so to the poor, relief efforts, but also advocacy, addressing housing and policing and human trafficking and payday lenders and issues like that. It includes vocation or work and faith initiatives, job readiness, job training, but also workplace integrity networks. It includes institutions that support the family in the city, like community centers and schools. It includes institutions for theological training, and it includes leaders coming together, again, much like you're doing here. When this ecosystem is in place, according to Keller, transformation is often the outcome. So when you go home today, when you go back to your system, you're part of that system today, ask yourself, is this ecosystem in place in Modesto, and is it healthy? How can we make it more healthy? Is transformation possible? Can a city be united for impact? Well, let's go back to those charts of the Lowell neighborhood and the Fresno presentation. 20 years ago, let's compare today. It's still a high-poverty neighborhood, but gangs no longer roam the street. Gunfire is absolutely rare in my neighborhood. We have 2 faith-based neighborhood associations, one Spanish, one English. We have 2 Christian tutoring programs in their 20th year. There's now street sweeping and alley lights. The streets have been repaved finally after 50 years. Home ownership has doubled in the Lowell neighborhood. There are more than 30 Christian relocators as strategic neighbors. We have a community development corporation and an anti-slumlord ministry that's making a difference. There's a new church plant focusing on blessing the neighborhood. They've just upgraded the local park. There are now church-based small businesses. Do you think the Lowell neighborhood has changed a little bit in 20 years? Yeah. You wouldn't recognize it if you had driven there 20 years ago, and I remember driving Marvin there not quite that long ago. And what about Fresno 20 years later? Fresno is now a connected city with a ministry ecosystem in place. There are still huge problems, but now we have faith-centered collaborative approaches in our city. Crime reduction in all categories. There's now a participatory civic culture with evangelicals at the table, assuming they should be seeking solutions. There's an emerging leader movement that's like a farm club for local ministries as well. There are more than a dozen new nonprofits laser targeting specific civic issues, some of them created by those very same emerging leaders. There are creative approaches with amazing track records like Hope Now for Youth, which grew out of that early movement that have now placed 2,000 gang members in full-time jobs, help some of them go back to school, marry their girlfriends, and enter a productive life. Yeah, Fresno is a different city than it was 25 years ago because people came together and united for impact. So, in closing, let me mention 2 key thoughts to hold on to today. Uniting a city for transformational impact is an ongoing process. It's always fragile. It always needs to be intentionally nurtured. Sometimes corrective measures need to be taken. Don't be afraid to enter into those. It's crucial. And second, partnerships are crucial for impact and sustainability. Now, I want to end by focusing on this. Here's one you should know from the North Valley. I think you've had a chance to hear from Monica Grassley of Lifeline Community Development Corporation in Merced, maybe several months ago. But if not, I encourage you to get to know this leader and her ministry and create a partnership. Lifeline CDC works in several North Valley communities using an asset-based community development approach, ABCD. It's easy to identify and focus problems, but Lifeline, in the tradition of John Perkins, with whom Monica worked, has learned that beginning with a community's assets and strengths provides a better platform for the long-term sustainable change. At their Lifeline Center in Winton, a community previously known for its poverty, drugs, and violence, working with residents, they offer a host of services that residents have requested, including Spanish, English conversation classes, computer classes, tax preparation, emergency food, graffiti abatement, kids club, a community garden, and a youth leadership training and Bible study. In a place that many people might judge and want to avoid, its goal, which it carries out in partnership with residents, is listen to this, to put Winton on the map for something good. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you, friends, isn't that simply stated what we all want? Isn't that what the gospel inspires? To put Modesto and the North Valley on the map for something good? That it might be known as a community characterized by the shalom of God. That's what we unite around. Well, I know that I have been traveling at the speed of light this morning. My assistant calls it the speed of white for some reason. But it has been a pleasure to be with you. I want to honor the time. So at the pastor's luncheon today, if some of you are around, I'll be sharing 3 things that influence a sustainable city transformation movement. We'll be talking about pillars, landmines, and sinkholes for community transformation. Until then, let me leave you with a couple of discussion questions. If you would, at your tables, here are a couple things to ask. What are some current assets Modesto and the North Valley have that could provide a good foundation for enhanced collaboration? And secondly, if you have time, where is there a sense of desperation in the city that leaders need to see more closely? Many blessings to you all as you carry out our goal of transformation in the North Valley. Bless you.
Along the way, oh, if God is on my side, oh, if God is on my side, oh, if God is on my side, who can be against me? There was a greatness I felt for a while, but somehow it changed. Some kind of blindness I used to protect me from all of my stains. Yeah, I wish this was vertical. It just feels like I'm falling slow. Oh, if God is on my side, then who can be against me? Yeah, in this wasteland where I'm living, there is a crack in the door filled with light, and it's all that I need to get by. Yeah, in this wasteland where I'm living, there is a crack in the door filled with light, and it's all that I need to shine. All of these people I meet, it seems like they're fine. Yeah, in some ways I hope that they're not, and their hearts are like mine. Yeah, it's wrong when it seems like work. To belong, all I feel is hurt. Oh, if God is on my side, yeah, if God is on my side, oh, if God is on my side, who can be against me? Yeah, in this wasteland where I'm living, there is a crack in the door filled with light, and it's all that I need to get by. Yeah, in this wasteland where I'm living, there is a crack in the door filled with light, and it's all that I need to shine. Oh, if God is on my side, yeah, if God is on my side, oh, if God is on my side, who can be against me?
All right, take 30 more seconds at your tables. All right, let's appreciate Randy again for being here this morning. Hey, right afterwards, Randy's going to be at his table in the back. He's got a few books back there, some other resources, including this Encountering God in the City. I read this. This is an amazing book. You're going to want to check out some of his resources in the back here. Hey, were you encouraged this morning? You know, it's amazing just to hear a city like Modesto, twice the size of Modesto, if not more, but a bigger Modesto in so many ways. And I'm back there listening going, there's a lot of the things that are going on in Fresno that are also going on in Modesto. I mean, be encouraged, Modesto. You know, we have some work to do. We have some places to grow, and there's a lot of new insights and ideas that I heard that, wow, what if that could develop more here? But there's also a lot of things that I heard that I know you heard was, that is happening here. That is going on here. And I'm just excited for our future and what is to come. Randy shared about he's going to be at our pastor's lunch today. If you know a pastor in town, you can text him right now or text him this morning and say, you need to be at lunch today. It's a free lunch at Chevy's on Stanford. You need to be at lunch today and hear this guy that I heard this morning because he's going to encourage you and inspire you. Also want to let you know that if you know people who have missed this morning, that you should really hear what took place here. We're going to have it on our YouTube page here later today. So it's all videoed this morning, and so also be on our social media pages that you can follow as well that you'll hear about when it gets out. And when you put your email on that sheet, you'll get an email with that video as well. Hey, next month, October 1 is going to be an incredible day in Modesto. We're going to focus on the issue of homelessness. And I'm going to have Kevin Carroll, wherever you're at, to come on up here. Kevin is going to be talking about at our Catalyst that morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. And then after Catalyst, I'll share a little bit what's going on then. So Kevin, what are you going to be talking about next month?
Well, we talk about homelessness.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a giveaway answer there. No, let me just say that, homelessness is one of those issues in our city that we are experiencing, and we're seeing some collaboration come together. And it's not a single ministry or organization's issue. It's a collaborative community issue. And I'm getting excited for the convening, the finding a way home, because there's a lot of great ideas and stuff going on in the background and meetings. And let me just say this, the other day I was over at Marvin's office, and we were talking, and I came out, and we were continuing our conversation, and I saw a lady that I recognized that comes to the mission on a regular basis, but she had been sleeping on the streets that particular night. I could tell her hair was all unkempt, and she was walking down the street with a walker. And just the overwhelming compassion of the Lord came over me to reach out to her. I know that she has a backstory. I know she has some issues. But then also I thought, our response as humans, whether you're a person of faith or not, is either compassion or contempt. One of compassion is saying, look, I want to reach this lady and help her. But the other one is, there's one of those homeless people. Let me just explain to you that every homeless person was made in the image of God. And they have dignity and they have respect that needs to be restored to them. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But most importantly, share some ideas, share some success stories, because there are success stories out there. And take a look at what's going on in the county, the point-in-time survey, the numbers, and how we can unpack those numbers. I think as business leaders, as community leaders, we need to be concerned not just about each other, but I thought of the story of Jesus when he said, who is your neighbor? Those folks who are homeless. I try to change that to not homeless people, but people who are homeless. Change that definition a little bit. And I want to encourage you, hopefully we'll have some time for questions, but it's not going to be about Modesto Gospel Mission, because that's not where we're going. This is about the city of Modesto, and we need to work collaboratively. So I look forward to next month.
That's great. Yep. Thank you, Kevin. Hey. So right after Catalyst next month, we're going to end a little bit early. We're going to try to end by 8 o'clock next month so we can get over to the Center Plaza because this incredible summit we're going to be having for our whole city. Already 350 people have RSVP'd. It maxes out at 450. So if you haven't signed up yet, you need to because it's going to fill up here obviously very, very soon. So really excited about October 1 next month. Hey, later today, well actually just this morning, Jenny Boyers, don't forget her seminar this morning. If you can't make this morning, it's also going to be tonight as well. What an awesome opportunity for all of us here. Hey, let's all stand. God, thank you so much for an incredible day. There's no better way to start off a morning than being inspired like this. And so, God, right now, I just ask for you to go before us as we go out into our city, to love our city like you love our city. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Have a great day.